The nameless one stood motionless for a long while, struggling to regain control over his awakened senses. Surrounded by the greenery of the valley, the pure and beautiful nature, he felt the proximity of the temple dedicated to him, and yet all he could see was grayness and darkness. In his eyes, the world was still a cursed place, destroyed by lost souls who, in their desperate search for salvation, unknowingly ravaged everything in their path. Blackness, graphite, and the pale sun once more took hold of the valley, which was meant to be an oasis free from evil, scorn, and greed. It was supposed to be a sanctuary, separated from the corruption of the empire and the sickness eating away at its core. But amidst this mire of depravity and moral decay, the god saw something precious, something worth protecting at all costs. He approached Carmen's lifeless body and, with the respect it deserved, arranged her in a dignified manner. Upon her chest, he placed a funerary symbol, in accordance with the tradition of offering the departed something meaningful during their final farewell. This object often held profound significance for both the deceased and the one left behind. The man gifted her his deck of cards, and then he recited a prayer.
The storm is coming. I hear the thunder and the wailing of the terrified wind. I see lightning tearing through the darkness like a blade through the black gown of night. I feel the trembling earth, as if frightened, awaiting the inevitable, and the swaying of the unyielding crowns of trees. I watch the river, snaking like a cashmere serpent toward the eye of the cyclone. I notice the birds fleeing in panic and the animals desperately seeking shelter. I sense the approaching wall of a tsunami, formed from the billowing clouds of doom, an unstoppable force. I plunge into the darkness, defenseless as a child. I am like a broken flower, submitting to a power that cannot be resisted. I am ready for the journey through turbulent layers of air. I rise, carried by the thunderous wonder of the world, crushed by divine might, twisted by the cruel fate that mocks this new puppet. Squeezed, shattered, stretched and remolded, I levitate above the world. I see, through thousands of eyes, valleys reshaping themselves. I hear the walls built by human hands cracking. In my mind's eye, images of poverty and despair paint themselves as the storm of change scatters fragments of earth to the edges of the world. It carves grotesque statues of kings, emperors, and czars who dared to believe they would survive the tempest of history. An epic of fury approaches. A symphony of blue lightning draws near. Justice is coming, judgment and verdict in tow. The time is approaching, indifferent to our truths, lies, and slanders. A judge with a whip arrives. The advocate remains silent. The accuser carries his conscience upon his shoulders, and the speaker forgets his words. Yes, the storm of our choices is upon us, the tempest of our lives. This is the hurricane of prayers for all the changes we must make before the gods curse us.
The god, the man, the eternal wanderer without a name, made his choice amid the rough words of his prayer. Those words, those paragraphs, those stormy phrases were not meant for Carmen. They were meant for him. He placed his hands on the woman's chest, closed his eyes, and reversed the flow of history. He finally understood that everything revolved around hope, not an inevitable sentence of justice. He realized that his death wouldn't be in vain, that it would carry meaning. Suddenly, a bright light appeared, and her gunshot wounds healed in an instant. The bruises and scars that bore the curse of the great desert faded away. The girl once again became the red-haired beauty with an innocent, lively face, and when she opened her eyes, she could once more captivate men's hearts with her gentle gaze.
What happened?
She asked, weary, as if awakening from a 1,000-year slumber.
What happened to you?
She touched her savior's face.
I don't have much time left, and there's so much I want to tell you before I go.
What have you done?
This isn't the time or place for our little quarrels. Listen carefully because this is important. Can you do that for me?
Carmen Phoenix nodded with a heavy heart, seeing the man slowly becoming transparent.
The gods haven't abandoned you. They didn't leave you at the mercy of a vengeful fate. My brothers and sisters loved you so much that they chose to live your lives. They valued this life so highly that, in the end, they forgot their divine nature and became mortals. They chose to live and die as humans. But as they left a piece of themselves in their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren.
Is that why you wandered across the empire?
No, that wasn't the reason for my wandering, but indeed in the faces of people, I saw the faces of the gods. Sometimes I felt that passing by a shop in the capital of the empire, I was seeing Ertulpin, the Lord of Hammers, selling used clothes, or Cassie, the sage of the 100-mile forest, working in a metal mine. These were moments both beautiful and terrifying.
Can I know then what you were searching for across the world?
A reason to put back on the old skin I had shed with the death of my beloved. Hers was the only face I never saw among humans. She had no children because, although she renounced immortality, she remained faithful to me until the end, until the day one of the human diseases took her forever.
You promised to use the cards when you saw the world through her eyes.
I see, dear Carmen, that you listened to my stories. Yes, that was the reason for my endless wandering. And though I never found that reason, I now know that sometimes you have to break a promise to save a miracle. Mira would never have forgiven me if I had acted otherwise.
A miracle?
You showed me that a person can be better than they are. You're a small, insignificant spark to this vile world. But for me, you became a star that guided me to the end of my journey. And for that, I am eternally grateful to you. You became my miracle.
The woman took his hands and drew them close to herself. She wanted to feel his warmth, which was slipping away with each passing moment.
Before you?
Ask me before I leave, and don't fear the word. Death isn't always something dreadful. Sometimes life is far more terrifying.
What is your name?
You may call me the gambler, for sweet Carmen. Your story about me giving up my name for my beloved is true. From the beginning of time, when I first saw Mira, I knew she was meant for me. She, wanting to ensure my loyalty, knowing the debauchery of our brothers and sisters, set me one condition. If I gave up my name, she would give herself to me, forever. I didn't hesitate for even a moment and never regretted her love.
The gambler still managed to tell her about the birth of the world, where oceans flooded canyons, animals raced across green meadows, and trees wove networks of dense, vibrant forests. When Carmen asked why he hadn't revealed the secret of this beautiful piece of land to her, he answered,
Just as I forgot my name, so many divine secrets were locked away from me when I abandoned my true form.
They could have spent many more days, weeks, or even years talking about ancient times hidden in the pages of history. But they didn't have that luxury. The most fearsome of the gods, the god who hated humanity, the god of cards and wagers, the god of fortune, the god of malicious fate, and the god of many fearsome titles, had to depart with the warm, spring wind. And although he closed his eyes, he had managed to open his heart. He could finally join his beloved, his brothers and sisters, full of hope and free from all worries. He was free, and so, without guilt, he bid farewell with these words.
Dear Carmen, remember us. Remember the gods who gave their lives for you.
The miracle of resurrection brought with it a burden Carmen had to carry from that fateful day until the end of her life. Though she had shown the last living God that human life was worth the sacrifice, he, in turn, revealed to her his doubts. Unintentionally, he had planted a seed as black as tar in her heart. As that seed grew, it wrapped itself around her soul like a poisonous ivy, making it impossible for her to stay in this green, idyllic valley. In her eyes, the azure sky took on a shade of graphite, and the sun became pale and lifeless. Instead of the beauty of the statues and the builder's might, she saw only squandered potential. Observing the struggles of animals on the edge of life and death, a few weeks later, She set out once more across the great desert. Lashed by the harsh wind, scorched by the heat pouring down from the grim sky, tormented by the vile whispers of the banshee that haunted her at night, and plagued by the hermits, she reached Assyria sick and exhausted. The town greeted her with cold, suspicious glances. The inhabitants murmured sinister spells in the form of rumors, although no one directly recognized her, treating her as just another wanderer defeated by the desert. One man dared to approach her, believing her words might change his life.
Did you find what you were looking for in the desert?
Carmen paused for a moment. She looked at the stall she had built many weeks ago. She no longer resembled the enthusiastic girl who had first arrived in Assyria. Now, she bore more resemblance to the nameless one who had lost faith in humanity.
Yes, I found the answer.
What is it?
There is only suffering and pain waiting for us in the desert. There is no green valley, no treasure, no gold or silver. You can tell that to any wanderer from now on. In the desert, only death and oblivion await them.
With that bitter response, she left the man who had dared to speak to her. She herself headed toward the heart of the empire to take on the role of a wandering preacher. The cycle was complete. Adam Phoenix had left the land shrouded in mist, and his daughter decided to return to the land of misery. Instead of preaching her father's words, she told people about the gods and their sacrifice. She wanted to honor them. She wanted to repay her debt, because she knew that it wasn't the gods who cursed humanity. It was humanity that had forsaken the gods.